Hello everyone, welcome to Jona Skills live webinar. Today's topic is the virtual team challenges, managing people effectively in multiple locations. My name is Nehal and I'm going to be your host today. Before I hand it over to Chris Divani and ask him to introduce himself and start the session, I would like to inform you that the session would be of 90 minutes and the attendee would be placed on mute to make sure that the presenter voice is clear to all our attendee and to avoid any unwanted noise. We will have a Q&A at certain interval during the webinar. If you have any question during the session, you can share it through the chat window. We will forward that to Chris and he will answer those questions accordingly. We will begin now. Chris, I would request you to please introduce yourself and start the presentation.
Thank you, Snail, and welcome everyone. So glad you could join us as we cover this very important topic. In the process of introducing myself, I'll also start to reference how we arrived at the content that is included in today's webinar. So in short, before I started our consulting firm in 1994, I worked as a manager in 3 organizations: Prudential Insurance, Sprint, and Baybank, which is now part of Bank of America. And in the process, during the course of my career, I went through 3 different organizations' management training programs, which helped me be an effective management consultant and also bring to light today's topic. So today's topic actually started 20 years ago. It was 1999, and for those who were around at the time, there was a very, very big concern about, they called it the Millennium Bug or the year 2000 bug. In short, people started to worry that all their computers, which were keyed into going only as high as 1999, would somehow malfunction the moment we arrived at midnight on January 1st, 2000. Of course, that did not happen. But in short, during 1999, one of the firms we were working with contacted us and said, you know, we have this issue. We have people in our 4-story headquarters, yet they are managing people remotely in 19 different field offices. And they, at the time, they called these distributed teams. Some organizations, I think, still use that term. But in short, they said, we need you to come up with an online guide that our managers can use as they manage people effectively in multiple locations. So that's how we arrived at this topic. We're going to cover 4 areas today. We're going to help you. There we go. We're going to help you today to boost your productivity at every location. Secondly, we're going to help you significantly cut down not just on paperwork, but on emails and phone calls. Third, we will help you by sharing a variety of tools, tips, and techniques to know better that your off-site employees are following rules and implementing proper policies and procedures. And fourth, we'll help you today to spot problems even when you are far away. So as we manage, we deal with a variety of situations and we solve many different kinds of problems. You see, one of the overarching concepts behind today's webinar is this. We as managers, we know what we do. We know the processes we follow, the tools and techniques that we use. And one of the most important things we can do, and we need to do this consistently, is to share with our people in the field, especially those people we call site managers, and I'll explain that term in just a moment. Especially with our site managers, to share with them the processes we follow, the tools we use, the techniques we utilize. So we use this term today, it's called site manager. And a site manager is anyone at a location other than ours who is managing either themselves, maybe they're working alone, or who are managing a team of people. Because you see, each person who is in charge at a remote location, even if they're working from a home office, needs to understand from us what are the processes to follow. You see, one of our overarching goals is to get people to follow the same processes, utilize the same tools, templates, and techniques that we use. And this is the best way that we can ensure that people in other locations are consistently following and using the same processes that we use to manage. So this is the first of many. We call this RSI problem solving, and we all are doing this whether we realize it or not. We deal with a variety of different situations and problems, and so the first thing we have to do is to relate. We have to attend to ourselves, and we have to attend to others. We have to do our best to understand what others are saying, what their perspective is, or what their perspectives are. And after we've listened and worked on understanding others' perspectives, we, of course, have to share our own perspective and make sure that others understand where we are coming from. And finally, we all have to respond to each other, because the first goal in solving any problem is we need to achieve a shared understanding of both our current state and our desired outcome, a shared understanding of where are we right now and where are we trying to get to. All right? So once we've achieved those shared understandings, the next thing we need to do is to strategize. We brainstorm. We discuss among ourselves, okay, how many different ways can we possibly solve this problem? So what are people's ideas? And we make sure we don't negate anyone's input and instead encourage everyone to provide input. Because what we do then is we populate our solution path with a number of different approaches that will help us solve our problem. Then once we've heard from everyone, let's say we have 4 different solution approaches which people seem to buy into, we have to select one from that list of 4. So we narrow down our solutions to one choice. We say, okay, now that we've arrived at an agreement of the solution path we're going to follow, each and every one of us has to craft an action plan. What steps will each of us be taking, and according to what schedule? And so finally now we're ready to implement our action plans. We execute the steps and we check the results. And let's say the first solution path we've chosen is not working. We need to make an adjustment. We need to go back to when we were strategizing. We have 3 solution approaches remaining. So from the 3 remaining solution approaches, which do we believe has the second best chance of succeeding? We choose that, we update our action plans, and now we implement our new action plans. We execute the steps, we check the results. Let's say we're successful on the second attempt. We don't need to make any more adjustments, and we're ready to move on to the next situation. All right? So in solving problems and in managing, and especially in managing people in other locations, the first thing we are looking to do is to maintain order while we are managing long distance. So in this section, this is the first of 4, we will understand how to give our site managers a business roadmap that will keep them headed in the right direction, how to create crystal clear procedures that off-site staff will follow to the letter, Also, I will ask and answer the question about fostering friendly competition between sites. Could this be doing your company more harm than good? Then we'll take a look at how to quickly smooth things over when you have to lay down the law and enforce an unpopular policy from a distance. And finally, in this section, the actions we really need to take. That's why I say you must take. If you want to significantly slow down not just the paper blizzard, but the email blizzard and the phone call blizzard, especially from site managers. So, first, giving site managers a roadmap that will keep them headed in the right direction. I want to do my level best today to share as many examples as I can, and also to be sure that I give credit where credit is due. So, in organizing a team meeting, now you lead team meetings all the time. What I learned, though, is the value of having a brief, and I mean 15-minute maximum, all hands-on weekly meeting. So because we have people in Europe, we also have people on the west coast of the United States, we have our Monday morning all hands-on. It's a Skype meeting, which people can also attend in person or by phone if they prefer. Every Monday, we are on the East Coast, U.S., so we have it at from 11 to 11:15 a.m. every Monday. Now, I first learned of this. This is in the 1980s, and this was from Frank Reese, who was the general manager, CEO for our company, which is called U.S. Telecenters, which eventually merged in with Sprint. You see, we had 65 people in our office. And again, this is pre-internet, pre-email, pre-websites, all of the wonderful modern technologies that we take for granted today. And so Frank would have a weekly meeting Monday morning from 8 to 8:15. And you're thinking, how can he have a meaningful meeting that only lasts 15 minutes? Well, he did so because he had a simple, straightforward 4-item agenda. So agenda item number 1, what are the key projects we are working on this week? Number 2, what is going on in the marketplace? What are we doing? What are our competitors doing? And what, if any, new laws or regulations are being implemented this week which could have an impact on our business? Number 3, he would always, at this time, praise, I'd say roughly 7 people publicly in front of everyone for having done something remarkable over the past week. And the way he populated this part of the agenda, he asked all 7 of us managers who reported to him once a week, he said, by Friday afternoon, I want a name from you, someone on your team who's gone above and beyond. Maybe they've worked late. Maybe in some rare instances they worked over the weekend. Maybe they brought in a new client, or maybe they saved an existing client relationship. So I just want to hear from you. Name the person and what they accomplished. And this way, he always had at least 7 people to praise in front of all of us every Monday morning. I love that. That was easily my favorite part of the agenda. And then agenda item number 4 was Q&A. And in only some of the rarest extraordinary situations did we ever go above and beyond 15 minutes. But Frank made sure, and his assistant Sherry would sit right next to him and basically keep him on time. Okay? So that weekly team meeting, which, as I mentioned, because of our people in Europe, we have every Monday morning from 11 to 11:15 a.m., gets everyone on the same page. So, of course, we have to prepare and facilitate the agenda. distribute and discuss our communication plan. For projects we're working on, how and how frequently will we be communicating with each other? When and where appropriate, we will discuss and clarify any norms and protocols. An important ground rule here, in part because we are leading this weekly meeting and also in part because of our role as a manager where we work, here is a reminder for all of us that everyone is accountable. I should actually update that to especially us, especially those of us who manage. Everyone's watching us, everyone's listening to us. Their eyes and ears are fixed on us because of our role as managers. So keep that in mind. And of course, before any interaction concludes, everyone should have a clear understanding of what their action items are and therefore what their action plan is for the week. And finally, distribute those meeting minutes immediately. Someone should be pre-populating the meeting minutes and then taking notes during the meeting. Maybe just a quick check back with you after the meeting's concluded. Have you once, review the notes that they've taken? Pardon me one second. And then to distribute those in the form of a broadcast email. Now, we recognize every week, usually there are some who might be out sick, some on vacation, some traveling to a client site, some at a client site. And therefore, that's where the value of the broadcast email kicks into everyone, because everyone, usually in our case by 12 noon Eastern, I'd say roughly within 45 to 60 minutes after our weekly meeting is concluded, everyone has received the broadcast email summarizing the content of that very important weekly meeting. Okay, so next, how can we create crystal clear procedures that offsite staff will follow to the letter? So I'll utilize our expense report process for this. So in outlining specific procedures, what we do is we remind people. We usually only have to meet about this once a year, but sometimes we'll have an update to it. In short, anyone submitting an expense report must have it submitted by 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday. If someone is traveling late on Friday or traveling over the weekend, it's an exception, but they are allowed up until Monday morning at 9 to submit their expense report. By the end of the day, Monday, our people in accounting and finance are expected to review and approve all expense reports. And if there are any questions or issues, they must contact the individual or individuals involved by the end of the day Monday. Any follow-up communication is expected to be completed by the end of the day Tuesday, so finance and accounting can submit the information through our system to the employees' banks and their bank accounts. This way, they submit on Wednesday, and by Friday morning, those amounts appear in their accounts. Pretty simple, straightforward, understandable. So I've also just provided the steps for submitting and then responding to expense reports. I've included and clarified the reporting process, and of course, we want to let people know that we will regularly check to clarify and confirm. All right, so there's an example for you. Here's something, this won't be a discussion, but what I will do here is to ask and answer this question along with some examples from our experience. So the question is, what are the benefits of fostering quote-unquote friendly competition between sites and site managers? So our experience has been when we are talking people working in the sales and or customer service functions, friendly competition works very well. And we believe this is primarily because there are clearly defined measurables within the sales and customer service functions. Within sales, number of sales, dollar amount of sales. In customer service, number of customer complaints or phone calls handled, and percentage of customers who report that they were highly satisfied with the work done by each individual customer service representative. For people outside the sales and customer service functions, I'm sure there may be exceptions. It's just been our experience that for people working in other functions such as finance and accounting, operations, just to name a few examples, friendly competition between sites doesn't seem to work quite as well. And once we get to the Q&A portion of our webinar, if anyone has an example from friendly competition among people outside those functions, we'd love to hear about it. Okay, next, how can we quickly smooth things over when we have to lay down the law and enforce an unpopular policy from a distance? So let me use another example here, something besides our expense report policy. Let's see. I know. For our project management policy. So our project management policies are very clear. You know, we follow the guidelines that come from the Project Management Institute and that are contained in the Project Management Book of Knowledge. So it tends to be fairly straightforward. At the same time, occasionally an exception will arise. And, you know, we of course handle it then in the moment, but we then, whenever an exception arises, we use that as an opportunity to remind everyone of our policies and procedures around project planning, around project management, around risk management, around client report submissions, just to name a few. So again, in our case, we utilize any situations where there has been an exception and how we handled it as an opportunity to discuss our project management policy. So also, what will save you a great deal of time is before you have that group conference call, prepare for the discussion by first understanding and writing down the rationale for your policy. In our case, you know, quality control, consistency, holding everyone to the same standard are a few of the talking points around the rationale for our policy. Next, anticipate any challenges to the policy by listing them and your responses. So do a little rehearsal with yourself where you are first writing down any anticipated objections and how you will respond to those objections. And you'll find that by spending just a few minutes going through that rehearsal and writing those thoughts down, it will save you a considerable amount of time on the group conference call. And then finally, remind everyone of the value to the team for enforcing the policy. Consistency, quality control. This way we are applying our policy and our procedures equally to everyone where we work. All right. So next, there we go. So the actions that we have learned we really need to take in order to slow down the paper blizzard from site managers. And actually, this is going to help you slow down paperwork, reduce it as well, and minimize emails and phone calls. So thank you for staying with me through the end of this information. This one slide I have found, even when I'm presenting it, is a very thorough reminder of what we who are managing people in other locations can do to save ourselves and, frankly, our people in the field a great deal of time, energy, and frustration. So first, verify your team communication plan and norms and protocols. So here I'll use as the example our system for communicating. Now I'm going to speak to the managers only meeting in just a few minutes, but it's helpful to introduce it now for the purposes of the talking points on this slide. In short, every Thursday, again from 11 to 11:15, from 11 to 11:30, we have a weekly managers only meeting. And we have a total right now of 8 managers in the field. We have 6 client project managers managing projects in the U.S. and then 2 European client project managers. So we have a weekly phone call with just the 9 of us, the 8 managers in the field and me, and we follow a process similar to the one I outlined in the weekly all-hands-on meeting, but I'll provide some more detail in just a few minutes. So as a part of that process, we ask everyone to submit an email. Because we have the meetings on Thursday, we ask everyone to submit an email no later than 3 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday with agenda item suggestions, talking points, any key problems or challenges that our site managers are running into, so we can be sure to populate our Thursday meeting, managers only meeting, with what they have offered. Okay, so in our case, it's not necessarily a reporting form, but it's a reporting process. And of course, that's supposed to be submitted once a week, every Wednesday by 3 p.m. Eastern. And then my favorite part of this information is next. So thank you for following this through with me. I think you will start to appreciate how following this process, if you are not already, will save you a considerable amount of time, energy, and frustration, especially as you manage people in the field. So if a site manager needs to communicate with you, not just about a personnel matter, but really just about anything, establish these guidelines. First, compose an email describing the situation. Next, include in the email message how you try to solve the problem or how you wish to solve the problem. Then contact me by email requesting a date and time for discussion. However, as you are composing the message, ask yourself, am I already empowered to solve this? And if so, try to solve it and save us both time. So now I'm going to step to the side for a moment and help everyone understand and appreciate what we're talking about here. In our organization, and this may be true in yours as well, we empower our managers to make decisions and to solve problems. Because, as you can see in the second check mark here, include in the email message how you tried to solve it or how you wish to solve it. So I first got this idea from a manager. He happens to be the chief of orthopedic surgery at a major U.S. hospital. And because they have a total of 70 people in the department, he asked if our firm would come in and help them make their processes for communicating with each other streamlined, more efficient, and more effective. So while we were going through this process, I was meeting with him, and he shared with me something which I think is a stroke of genius. and I immediately adopted it for our firm, so now I share it with all of you. It's this. He said, anyone can approach him anytime with a problem, however, under one very specific condition. They need to have either tried to solve the problem and failed, or they have an idea of how they would like to solve the problem that they want to run by him. So he made this very, very clear to everyone. First of all, that he's open to meeting with anyone as long as they meet that one very specific condition. And he and his department also empower their people to solve problems and make decisions. I am guessing that most, if not all of you, already do this. However, by following this process, if you don't already, you will significantly cut down on paperwork, on emails from people in the field, and on phone calls from people in the field. Why? Well, first of all, you hopefully are empowering them to make decisions and solve problems. Secondly, they will appreciate your empowering them to solve problems and make decisions, and they will want to do this on their own, in part because you've empowered them to do so. And third of all, they will grow and develop by trying to solve problems themselves, trying to make decisions, and when and where appropriate, consulting with you. However, because you empower them to solve problems and make decisions, they will be doing the overwhelming majority of just that. And you will find, even if you just remind them that they are already empowered to solve problems and make decisions, you are going to save so much time, energy, and frustration for yourself, guaranteed. So we've covered in this first section how to maintain order while managing long distance. Next, before we proceed to section 2, let's understand this is your brain, and no, this is not your brain on drugs. So follow this with me from the upper left, if you will. You get an idea. It's in your brain. You have to get it out of your brain and perhaps on paper, if you will. In short, you have to type something up, maybe first in Word before you send it as an email. And you also, for some ideas, you will want to articulate. You'll want to speak this idea or these ideas that you have. Someone else has to hear and receive the messages you are sharing. They might have to see and read the messages you are sending, if that includes emails. And once they have heard what you've said and or read what you've said, they have to translate these messages back into their brain. So with that many steps involved in the communication, are there some possibilities for interference? Absolutely. So there are some reminders here for the steps we want to follow when communicating. First of all, Stephen Covey once wrote, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." And one of my managers at Prudential, John Breedlove, once told me something. He gave me some of the best advice I ever received. He said, "Chris, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should try to listen twice as much as you speak." And I thank John Breedlove all the time for that advice. So we want to focus first on getting another person or other people's points of view. We ask clarifying questions. We make confirming statements, such as, "What I heard you say is ABC 1, 2, 3. Did I hear you correctly?" Then it's our turn to give our point of view, perhaps offer constructive criticism, perhaps hitchhiking. And in this case, in a business context, hitchhiking is not sticking your thumb out, standing on the curb looking for a ride. It is acknowledging someone else's idea, telling them you like that idea. Then their idea gives you another idea, and you voice that, and then you check back with the person. So, for example, someone approached me recently and said, I think we work hard and we work smart, but we don't necessarily work well together as a team. And I thanked them for that insight. And I said, I like that idea. Your idea makes me think it would be great if we took a day and went off-site. First, we could talk as a large group about what it means to be a team. Then we could engage in some exercises, maybe some games, which allow people to participate together in smaller teams. Then we could reconvene everyone together and debrief their experiences, learn from everyone what they learned about why it's important to be part of a team and what it means to be part of a team. What do you think of that? I said to him. He really liked it. So I acknowledged his idea. I added value to his idea with the off-site meeting, and then I checked back. 3 steps. Very, very important. Okay. So now in the second module, we're going to talk about what the steps are that we can take to stay in touch and control no matter what, no matter where we are located and no matter where our site managers are located. So in this section, we'll talk about how to keep your finger on the pulse of off-site action without making employees feel like Big Brother is watching, what responsibilities you must shoulder alone, and when you can safely share the load with site managers and employees. Next, a common but deadly management mistake that will ensure a site manager will never trust your motives. Next, determining some of the faster ways that we can enable a poorly performing site to get up to speed. Then, how to quickly and accurately check the quality of products or services at any site. And finally, the inside secrets to creating a lasting bond between site managers so everyone feels like they're on the same team. So how can we keep our finger on the pulse of off-site action without making employees feel like Big Brother is watching? Well, we've talked already about the weekly all-hands-on meeting, and I've started to reference the weekly conference call with just our site managers. And I'm encouraging you to do the same thing, a managers-only meeting following a model similar to the weekly all-hands-on meeting with one variance. I would just encourage you, if you're not already doing this, to include a 5th item on the agenda, but maybe make it the 3rd or 4th, not the 5th, item on the agenda, where it's a peer-to-peer review. In other words, okay, now it's time for us to hear about people's successes as well as people's challenges and what you are learning from both your successes and your challenges, and especially where you are challenged. Let's ask your peers, your fellow site managers, to help you think through, walk through, and hopefully successfully address that problem that you're having. So it's a manager-help-manager interaction, and it's very, very helpful. It's an important part of how we do business, and our site managers especially love 2 things. First of all, they love that it's a managers-only meeting, and secondly, they particularly enjoy receiving help from their peers because, while I'm present on these calls and can share some insights in most cases, they actually get the most help and the best help from their fellow site managers. So, of course, there's that weekly conference call with them. We allocate 30 minutes because many times site managers will have a somewhat complex problem or situation that they need to explain and that they're looking for help with. And then, of course, just as we do with the weekly all-hands-on Skype call, we have my executive assistant within an hour of concluding our site managers only meeting, send out a broadcast email to just our site managers. Okay, next. Here are some of the responsibilities we must shoulder alone as managers and when we can safely share the load with site managers and employees. So as managers, first of all, we ourselves and no one else must manage and be solely responsible for supporting and monitoring site manager performance. The first time I learned about this, I'd just been hired at Sprint. My manager was a terrific guy named Brian Bogosian, and Brian hired me to manage people in our call center, but essentially left me alone for 3 months. Now, some people might find that desirable. I don't mind telling you I found it a little frustrating, but, you know, he was my manager and it was his job. Well, one Thursday evening, I was working late in the office because I'd been there just about 3 months, and I had to prepare the budget for the next quarter. Well, he leaves a voicemail on my phone. He says, "Chris, we have a big problem. I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. When you arrive, please don't go to your office, come right to mine so we can sit down and talk about this." Well, first of all, suffice it to say I did not sleep very well that night. And second of all, I really started to panic when I stepped in his office Friday morning. He gives me a very stern look and he says, "Close the door and have a seat." I didn't know what I'd done, but I had this terrible feeling I was about to be fired. And as he would tell me later, I was both red-faced and sweating because of that. And he could see this. So he immediately said, no, I'm sorry. He said, "I didn't call you in here to chew you out. I called you in here to apologize." And it's a good thing I was sitting down at that point because if I'd been standing up, I might have collapsed. I was just so shocked by that. And then he looks at me. He says, "You know, I hired you 3 months ago, and I haven't done anything to check in with you. I haven't stopped by your office. I haven't called you." He says, "Well, this stops today." Then he starts shaking his finger at me, although he was the one apologizing. He said, "From this day forward, once a week, I will call you. Once a week, I will stop by your office to check in with you, both by phone and in person." He said, "Secondly, my office door is often open, so you can come by any time. If my door's open, just knock, and I'll usually welcome you in, and we'll talk through any problem you're having." Also, he said, "What works about this is if my office door is closed, you just see my assistant, Sherry, and she'll schedule a meeting for you." He said, "This communication has to improve, and then I will never forget the next words out of his mouth." He said, "The reason all of this is important is because my number one job as your manager is to do everything I can to be supportive of you and to enable you to succeed at the highest level." Well, that blew me away because that was the first time someone above me in the organizational hierarchy said that their most important job was to be supportive of my being successful. That's our number one job as managers, is to provide as much support as possible to each of our direct reports so they can succeed at the highest level. In addition, as managers, there are 5 things we have to do. We have to plan, organize, communicate, monitor, and delegate. And this is another process. I encourage us, if we're not already doing this, share this 5-step process for managers with your client site managers. And as I say here in the third arrow point, share this approach with each of your site managers and have them adopt the same process and approach to ensure both consistency and collaborative support. So next, a common but deadly management mistake that will ensure a site manager will never trust your motives. Never, ever, ever, ever. There should be about 20 evers here. Never, ever, 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 etc. Discuss an issue you are having with a site manager with someone else first. If you have an issue with someone, approach them directly and privately. Now, some may be asking, really? This is for managers and you're reminding this is like communication 101? Well, the answer is yes, and this is why. Just last week, we were working with 2 levels of management in an organization where many of these people have worked with each other between both levels for 10 years or more. Yet we learned from one of the second-level managers, so these are the executive management team at the top level and then the operations management team at the second level. We learned from someone among the operations management team that one member of the executive management team was disrespecting 2 of the operations managers to other managers. So this person apparently had never confronted these 2 second-level managers with the issue they had, which was, in short, that an implementation did not work very well, but their manager, the executive, had never sat down with them and done a debrief after the process was complete. That's why this is included in today's webinar. 3 people, who've been working together for more than 10 years, and someone on the executive level had forgotten this, to approach these 2 individuals directly and privately. Next, how can we quickly and accurately check the quality of products or services at any site? Well, for those of us in retail, which I am not, but I have worked in retail, there's this wonderful concept called the mystery shopper, where the corporation empowers someone, they contract with individuals, they empower them with a corporate credit card and enable them to essentially visit locations and act as a customer or prospective customer to see how they are treated. They are allowed to make purchases, and in most cases, up to a certain dollar limit, they're allowed to keep the merchandise that they buy. And then they, of course, report back to senior management their experiences as a prospective customer in that store. Other ways to quickly and accurately check the quality of products or services at any site is the surprise visit. Now, I'll say this. I've been in charge of our consulting firm now for 25 years, and I've only had to do this twice. And in both cases, it was when someone, not a client site manager, but someone who reported to one, called in to complain. Now, mind you, these complaints initially go to human resources, but then they immediately get relayed to me. And since I'm president of our firm, I consider it very serious, and I take personal responsibility, and I go to meet with each of the 2 parties involved in an attempt to get to the truth. Not a perfect process, but a very helpful one. Then, of course, there are customer satisfaction reports. This is my personal favorite kind of feedback because, you know, our customers, our clients, will give us their honest feedback. Now, grant you, most times they speak up when they have a complaint. That's okay, because after we've helped them work through solving the problem from the complaint, we then offer them a free maintenance visit with our crew who are in our parking garage, and they do, I think it's a 22-point check, no charge. People think there's a catch. I can tell you honestly, there is not a catch. But also, I make a point, and I'm sure you do this as well, to interact directly with as many of your clients as you can and basically say to them, I'm here at such and such a location. The people working with you report to me. If there's ever a problem or issue, I ask you first, discuss it with your client project site manager, and yet if for any reason you are dissatisfied with their response, here is my direct number. And I send them an email. I send them I think it's like a video copy of my business card, because I want any customer, any client with a complaint anytime to feel comfortable contacting me. Next, what are some of the inside secrets to creating a lasting bond between site managers so everyone feels like they're on the same team? Well, first, let me encourage you to constantly look for ways to recognize successful performers. I shared with you the process that we use at our weekly all-hands-on meeting, inspired by Frank Reese. And, praising someone publicly costs you just a few seconds of breath, but gains you hundreds, if not thousands, of degrees of loyal following from people on your team. People will respect you and appreciate you so much more when you praise people on your team in front of everyone. You can do this with a broadcast email too, but anytime you have a chance to do it in person, that's when it's golden. Also, ask each site manager to recognize one of their peers. We often do this at our weekly managers-only meeting. We ask them to nominate one of their peers whenever they have gone above and beyond. Let everyone know, and you facilitate the team discussion. Also, support the notion of peer pairs. What I mean is this. I mentioned to you we currently have 8 client site managers in the field. And so what I do to kind of get the ball rolling is I will check in with them and ask them individually if they already have a fellow site manager who they would like to make as their, we call them emergency buddies. And what we mean is you get stuck, you're in a jam, this is who you're going to call. This is the manager peer who you are going to call for help, asking for help in solving a problem. And we also explain that when you have one person in particular, along with a backup, now you're getting the help that you need quickly from one of your peers who undoubtedly has experience with a problem similar to the one you're experiencing right now. And so I'll pre-assign people into pairs, and yet if people want to switch out, they just let me know. This way they have at least one, often 2 manager peers who they can contact directly when they're in a jam, and they help each other. It's amazing. Talk about another way to save yourself some time, energy, and frustration. Next, practice 2 pieces of praise for each piece of criticism. And I first learned this when I was participating in a Toastmasters club. For those not familiar with Toastmasters, it's a public speaking club. They have clubs all over the world, many of them in corporations. A number of them meet at libraries, community centers. In short, though, you are in a safe environment where you are given 5 to 7 minutes to speak on a topic of interest, and you receive feedback from everyone else. And you see the feedback form is this simple. Number 1, name 2 things the speaker did well. Number 2, identify something the speaker could do differently next time. 2 pieces of sincere praise, followed by 1 suggestion for improvement. I find this an ideal ratio, and what I've learned works especially well is when you start with the 2 or more pieces of sincere praise. People are much more receptive to any suggested changes that you want to bring up to them. A favorite question to ask along the way is, how does this impact our team? Think about that. When you ask this question of your site managers, they are now thinking even more clearly and more frequently, oh, that's right, we are a team of site managers. We are here to help support each other. And finally, of course, support and facilitate any and all team-building activities. So we've covered in the second section how we can stay in touch and control no matter what. Now we're going to take a look at 4 sets of information which will help us to establish quality-minded teams that you can rely on. We'll look at how we can sharpen our long-distance facilitation skills by getting consensus from the team. Then we'll take a closer look at how we can structure teams so they will pull together no matter which site they're from. Then I know it says the only way to handle teams. Let's just say, in my experience, we'll look at the best way, in my experience, to handle teams that were established before you arrived without decreasing productivity. And finally, how to build an emergency response team that will know what can be handled independently and when to call you immediately. So, sharpening your long-distance facilitation skills by getting consensus from the team. Well, first of all, this is very important and important to share with your site managers to understand what consensus means. Consensus is not, well, you can utilize voting, but I prefer to use a show of hands and maybe in some cases a silent ballot. But ultimately, consensus is about finding that critical mass, which is hopefully larger than 51% of people who agree. It does not require unanimity, that everyone arrives at the point where they agree. I mean, this isn't a jury, which is compelled to be unanimous in their decision. And I'll speak to my experience with utilizing consensus. I use consensus specifically in the following kinds of situations. I'm trying to solve a problem, and I have trouble narrowing it down from 2 possible solution approaches. So I will call a meeting of my site managers. We usually do this as a Skype conference call. And I will present to them both the problem I'm facing and the 2 solution choices that I've narrowed it down to. And I say to them, okay, this is one of our consensus situations, so I'd like you to discuss, and of course I'm here to listen, or I'll step off the call if you prefer. And I'm asking you to discuss among yourselves, so we all can hear, we'll take turns, of these 2 possible solution approaches, which do you prefer? Or is there a third solution approach that you prefer? Now, granted, that will complicate our situation. However, sometimes one of you will have a new idea that I'd not even thought of, which may help me most effectively solve the problem I'm wrestling with. So next we have keep the decision-making group small. So I encourage you to keep the decision-making group limited to just your site managers. Then the next one is a bit problematic. Get a diversity of backgrounds and experiences in the group. Hopefully, among your site managers, you have some people with limited experience, some people with maybe 3 to 5 years plus of experience, and perhaps even others somewhere between 7 to 10 years of experience or maybe even more. And the reason I offer that as a thought is you will benefit by receiving input from people with limited experience, a medium degree of experience, or considerable experience. They will bounce ideas off each other to help you not make the decision, but to make a better informed decision. That's what consensus decision-making is about. So I say to all of my site managers, I remind them regularly, you are not here to make my decision for me. However, you are here to help me make a better informed decision. So these are the guidelines on the scope of decision-making. I present to you the problem, the two solution approaches I'm considering, asking you to discuss and debate these. If you have a third suggestion, please offer it. We will consider it. Next, of course, I have the statement, realize that some opinions are more equal than others. All I mean here is, to the degree we have people with the most experience and or a significant degree more experience than others among our site managers, generally speaking, and I try to avoid generalizing, but in this case, generally speaking, the people with the most experience will often offer the richest and broadest perspectives. Next, don't equate compromise with consensus. Consensus is not like, compromise is for politicians, usually in legislative bodies. I'm not asking anyone to compromise what they think, what they believe works, and what they believe doesn't work. I'm not asking anyone ever to compromise on any of those four. I'm asking everyone to contribute fully, share a perspective, and then build some consensus so I can leave this meeting with a plan for approaching someone very special in my life. Okay? All right. Prepare sufficiently. Apply consensus decision-making to the right type of decisions. So I've articulated it, my experience, and please, if your experience has been different with utilizing consensus, please offer that during the Q&A portion as well. My experience has been, I wait until a situation where I've come down to two possible solution approaches. I'm having trouble choosing between the two, so I call them together to discuss and debate it so I can make a better informed decision. Next, get facilitation if you need it. Now, mind you, virtually everyone at our firm is an experienced and effective facilitator. However, once a year, we call everyone together, people who have worked with us over the past year, in January, so we can have an open and honest discussion which starts with two questions. The first is, please identify all the things on any and all projects that you worked on within the last year that we did especially well. And then the second question is, please identify anything from your experience with us that we could have done better and should do better next time. And you see, just through the process of that one exercise, we learn so much. We learn so much from each other. And yet, though we are experienced facilitators, for that process, every year, we bring in an outside facilitator. Why? So we all can participate fully, and someone from outside our organization can facilitate. And finally, keep the team playing together. The more fun they have with each other, the more they'll enjoy working with each other, the higher their productivity will be, and generally speaking, we will have a very happy workforce. So next, how can we structure teams so they will pull together no matter which site they're from? Well, the farther a site is from you, work proportionately harder and communicate more frequently with those site managers. For example, I mentioned 2 of our 8 client site managers are in Europe. I make an individual call to each of those 2 European client site managers every week. It is, as a rule, generally early on a Tuesday, my time, so I'm speaking with them in the afternoon. And I have found out already in the 6 weeks that I've been doing this, that the feedback, especially from our 2 European client site managers, is incredibly, incredibly favorable. And I can't even recall where I got that idea. Maybe it was just once when I was reviewing the content from today's webinar. But you see, something else that influenced this decision was that we started working with people who, if they worked in a remote location, definitely had this us versus them mentality. And the mentality also suggested that they perceived people working in headquarters always got first preference because they were located closest to the people who made those decisions. And you know, in some cases, they may have had a point. However, once we reminded the executives in these organizations about this perception, they started to involve people who were in other locations more frequently and consistently. So just some thoughts from not just our experience, but from the experience of managers in organizations where we have consulted. Next, direct and facilitate regular team communication. And this includes, of course, regular weekly, in our case, weekly team meetings and conference calls. Next, and this is a personal favorite, give each site manager an opportunity to lead the discussion addressing an agenda item. And so we do this already. As I mentioned, for our weekly site managers only meeting, we have 5 agenda items, and we have 8 client site managers. So what we try to do every week is have 4 of our client site managers lead one of the agenda items, with me leading the 5th. This way, every 2 weeks, each and every one of our 8 client site managers has an opportunity to lead the discussion around an agenda item. And then let everyone know, and you facilitate a team discussion where any site manager can bring a problem or issue to the team for help. This references what I mentioned before about how our weekly site managers only meetings include that. That's the 5th agenda item right there. Peer-to-peer, helping each other. And finally, provide as many team incentives and rewards as you can. So next, what is a method for handling teams that were established before you arrived without decreasing productivity? So for a moment, I'm just asking you, put yourself in the place of someone. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. You are a team member on a team where, for whatever reason, your manager has departed and a new manager is coming in. What is your biggest fear? What is your biggest concern? Your biggest fear or concern is, oh my God, this new person is going to come in and scrap everything we've done and force us to do things their way. And here is, in my experience, the best way you can put that thought out of their minds in a matter of seconds. When you first meet with everybody, I'm encouraging you to facilitate a conversation, or if you haven't done this and you've basically inherited a team within the last year or two, call everyone together and ask them just two questions which you facilitate. The first question is, okay, first, everyone please identify all the things that we already do well. And don't put a time limit on this. Because the more people are talking about all the things that are already working well, first of all, the better they will feel. Secondly, the better they will feel immediately about you, because you're not coming in and just basically saying, this is how we're going to do things going forward. No. You want to understand from them first, what are all the things that are already working? Because you wouldn't want to change those, right? Exactly. Then, and only then, do you get to the second question is, what can we change and improve? What can we change and improve? And they will, again, appreciate being asked instead of being told, instead of you coming and saying, I've been told that people are not communicating well and people are often showing up late for meetings or showing up late for work. Well, instead of taking that approach, which is kind of like the scolding teacher or parent, take the adult approach and ask them, what could we change or improve? And you see, first by having them answer that question of identifying all the things you're doing well, you alleviate so many problems. You wipe away immediately their biggest fear, and you get people talking positively about all the things that are working well, therefore that you probably are unlikely to want to change. By taking this sort of a welcoming and engaging approach, you will endear many of the people on the team to you, because you didn't come in to tell them how you were going to change things. You asked for their input first. You see, when you ask someone to help you understand and analyze a problem, they are far more likely to remain with you, to participate in the solution. Ask and engage them, and they are far more likely to remain with you, to participate not just in this solution, but to stay with you. And that's what you want. So you're taking a team pulse here. You've asked them what's worked in the past. Bottom line, though, you do manage your team the way that you see fit. However, by asking their input first, you've engaged them in the process. Next, how can we build an emergency response team that will know what can be handled independently and when to call you immediately? Well, this calls to mind urgency and importance. Important is defined as marked by or indicative of significant worth or consequence and valuable in content or relationship, whereas urgent is calling for immediate attention and being insistent. So when we take into account urgency and importance, we take into account the whole sum of activities. And there are some activities, we share this with people on our team. Some activities are of both high importance and high urgency. These are quadrant 1 activities, and these must be done now, or else there will be both immediate and severe consequences. Then there are activities which are of high importance but lower urgency. These are quadrant 2 activities, and the consequences for not doing these are severe. However, the consequences are not immediate. So we often make the mistake of putting these tasks off. So this is a super quick check-in with everyone on today's webinar. We want to be spending the overwhelming majority of our time in quadrant 2. Work on those things that are important but not necessarily urgent as much as possible. And this is how we improve both our efficiency and our effectiveness. So encourage this as well, especially in your site managers. This is one of those areas where you direct them and you say, I want each and every one of you spending as much of your time on matters that are of high importance but lower in urgency, because this is how we all improve our efficiency and effectiveness. And as for all those activities in quadrants 3 and quadrants 4, which are of lower importance, try to not work on them, try to dismiss them, try to eliminate them as much as possible. Why? Because they're of lower importance, or they're not important at all. They're big, big time wasters. So we've talked about here how we can establish quality-minded teams that we can rely on. Now we're going to round third and head home, as they say in baseball, by addressing 7 important questions that will help you troubleshoot off-site problems like a pro. So the first question is, how often should you be visiting each site? Once a month? Once a quarter? Well, again, let me share my experience with this. Once a quarter, as a general rule, is certainly frequent enough. In fact, you may have some teams that are performing so well that you can visit them maybe only once every 6 months. And what I do, and perhaps what you do, is to reserve visiting sites more frequently than once a quarter, maybe as frequently as once a month. Keep that reserved for only those teams that are functioning very, very poorly. Consider utilizing the standard of visiting each site once a quarter as a kind of benchmark. And again, in a number of cases, you may be able to reduce the frequency for visiting sites to once every 6 months. And save that once a month only for the very poorly performing teams. Next, do I use phone or face-to-face? Well, remember, we're encouraging our site managers to make decisions and solve problems themselves. However, there will be some instances where they've tried to solve a problem and failed, or they have an idea of how they would like to solve a problem that they want to run by you. And that's fine. Save those situations for phone conferences whenever possible, and saving face-to-face meetings for really only the most extreme kinds of situations, or let's say a situation that involves a more complex problem like, I don't know, sexual harassment, or someone causing a lot of trouble at a site. I mean, those are just 2 of the instances I can think of that I would save actually going and visiting a site to solve a problem, keep it limited to extreme situations such as that. However, site manager has a problem, they've tried to solve it and failed, or they have an idea of how they'd like to solve it and they want to discuss it with you. Save that for a phone call. Ask them, though, on that phone call, how they would like to resolve the problem. Because when you ask or invite someone how they would like to solve a problem, they are far more likely to remain with you to participate in the solution, as long as you give your okay to it, to solve the problem the way they want to. And that also significantly increases the probability that they will be successful in solving the problem. Why? Because it was their idea. In those rare instances where you can't resolve the problem by phone, okay, then make a site visit. Also, though, before you go, have the site manager compose and send to you an email which describes the problem, because this way you have something in writing that you can refer to with the site manager when you visit with them. And I hope this happens very, very rarely. That should be the goal. And of course, if you do have to meet with them face-to-face, review the problem using the relating, strategizing, and implementing method for solving problems. Okay, next, how do I put a stop to childish disputes between sites without taking sides or making matters worse? Well, consider following the guidelines for group process facilitation. First, establish yourself as the facilitator and give each party an opportunity to tell their side of the story. In other words, meet with each side independently. Let's say you have a dispute between people at different sites. Have one phone call with just the person or persons at site A and ask them two questions. First of all, before we get to the problem, the reason you contacted me, I want to hear from you first, and I'm going to take some notes about the things that are already working well between people at your site and at the other site. And don't tell me nothing's working well, because you must come up with at least two things that are working well. It can't be a total disaster. You just don't allow that. Okay? And then the second question is, okay, now that you've shared with me at least two things that are working well between your two sites, tell me what the problem is or what the problems are. And you have that same conversation with just the people at site B, and then you bring them together for a group conference call. And you share with them together, okay, people at site B, first, here's what the people at site A says is already working well between you. And okay, people at site A, here's what the people at site B said is already working well between you. Okay, that's good. We identified all the things that you all said are working well. Now, do the same with the problem or problems. Site B, here's a quick list of what the people at site A have said is the problem. People at site A, here's what the people at site B have said is the problem or are the problems. You see, by identifying first all the things that are working well, you will, in almost all cases, help yourself and help them, because in most cases, people will be more receptive to hearing about problems if they've first heard about what's working well. And for any areas of disagreement, work to find consensus. So all those areas working well come first, making people more receptive to discussing openly between themselves with you present facilitating on how we can work together better. Next. There we go. Okay. What can I do to develop a reward system that will motivate employees from all levels at every location? Well, ask yourself and ask your people these questions. What rewards do people value? What incentives do people value? Then list potential accomplishments which would merit recognition and reward, and associate each accomplishment with a baseline recognition and baseline reward. For example, maybe people get an Employee of the Month parking space. Maybe people get dinner for two up to a certain dollar amount. Maybe people get 2 tickets to a show up to a certain dollar amount. So what are the rewards that people, or maybe it's a half day, or maybe it's a day off paid, whatever it might be. What are the rewards that are going to be offered based on certain baseline accomplishments? Next, how do I determine whether I should coach, counsel, or warn the entire staff at a location about their performance? Well, there's an association here between the first bullet point, the third bullet point, and the headline. So, first question: is this the first time the problem has occurred? Third question: the problem is bothersome. And then top statement, headline: I should coach the entire staff at a location about their performance. Next, first question: is this the second time the problem has occurred? Third question: the problem is now worrisome. And in the headline, I should counsel the entire staff at a location about their performance. Finally, first question: if this is the third time the problem has occurred. Third question: the problem is now severe. So in the headline, I should warn the entire staff at a location about their performance. Then how do I develop an action plan that will help me handle any cover-up I might find, no matter how large or how small? Well, discuss the cover-up with the party or parties involved privately. Ask each person what happened and why they think it happened. Then ask each person what we can do to resolve the problem, and ask each person what we can do to avoid the problem recurring. Clearly explain company policy about avoiding cover-ups. Clearly describe the consequences if the cover-up recurs, and then thank everyone for participating in problem solving. And then how do I ensure the isolation factor won't turn into a problem at remote sites? Remember, the farther a site is from you, the more frequently you should communicate with the site manager. Remember my weekly one-on-one calls with our 2 European site managers. So we've now addressed 7 questions that help you troubleshoot off-site problems like a pro. And I'm going to skip over a few slides because we want to get to your questions. So we've helped you to maintain order while managing long distance. We've helped you stay in touch and control no matter what. We've helped you to establish quality-minded teams you can rely on, and help you troubleshoot off-site problems like a pro. So we've addressed our 4 learning objectives to help you boost productivity at every location, significantly cut down on paperwork, know that off-site employees are following rules and implementing proper policies and procedures, and help you spot problems even when you're far away. So the bottom line is communicate your goals and objectives clearly so you can maintain order while managing long distance. Help support your site managers and site's performance by staying in touch and control no matter what. Hone and refine your long-distance facilitation skills, practice, so you can establish quality-minded teams you can rely on, and provide rewards and incentives that people value. Continue communicating effectively and regularly so people will perform better, and it will be easier for you to troubleshoot off-site problems like a pro. So now it's time for your questions. Let's turn it back to our host, Neil. Neil. I know she will be back with us shortly.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Yeah,
Hi.
actually, I was on mute and I didn't unmute, so that so little this. Yeah, thank you for the wonderful presentation, Chris. Now we will begin the Q&A session. I'm just unmuting all the lines. Yeah, I have unmuted all the lines. So, do you have any question? Please go ahead and ask, or you can send it through a chat window, and Chris will answer those questions accordingly. Anyone has any question? I have unmuted all the lines.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello? Can you hear me?
yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay, this is Bobby. Just have one question, and this goes back to almost the beginning. When you have your weekly meetings with the managers and all that, is it healthy to have longer than 30-minute weekly meetings with them, or does it really not matter at all?
It definitely helps. So again, yeah, we have 2 weekly meetings. One is the all hands on, 15 minutes on Monday, and then managers only on Thursday. It helps us to keep it to 30 minutes or less. First of all, it values everyone's time. Secondly, it gives managers a forum where within 30 minutes we can review people's progress, and frankly, many times our meetings conclude in less than 30 minutes. But what's especially helpful about having that weekly managers-only meeting is the part on the agenda where they help each other. They know that they have a safe place where managers only, they can bring up problems that will be discussed just among their fellow managers that we facilitate. And they tell me all the time how helpful they find having a forum like that where they can turn to their peers and get some help. Excellent question. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Is there anyone having any other questions? I think there are no more questions, so we can end the session. Hope our presenter answered all your questions. However, you can still send your questions to our email ID, that is support@ijonaskills.us. With this, we will end the session. We appreciate your time and believe the session was informative and up to your expectation. Soon you would be receiving certificate of attendance and the feedback form. Kindly send your comment. Your feedback is important for us. Once again, thank you so much for participating in this webinar, and we wish you a pleasant day ahead. Thank you, Chris, for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Snail. Thank you, everyone.